The wind carried dust across the empty road that cut through the heart of a quiet little town. The afternoon sun was blazing, painting everything in gold and heat. At the corner of Main Street sat a worn-out gas station, the kind where the windows were always smudged and the coffee was always burnt. Inside, Evelyn, an elderly widow with silver hair tucked neatly under a faded scarf, stood behind the counter. She wasn't the owner. She just helped out sometimes, more out of habit than need, though truth be told, she did need it. Her pension barely stretched far enough, and her husband's old truck had stopped running months ago. Still, she smiled through it all. That's just who she was. The bell above the door jingled, breaking the silence. A man stepped in, tall, rugged, with grease on his hands and a weariness that clung to him like smoke. His jacket bore a patch that made most people nervous. Hell's Angels. His face was rough, his beard untrimmed, and he moved like someone who'd been fighting life for too long. "Afternoon, ma'am," he said quietly. "Any chance I could borrow a phone?" Evelyn frowned softly. "Phone's been out for days, dear." The storm knocked it down again. He nodded, disappointed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Figures. My bike broke down a mile back. Ran out of gas and cash." He wasn't asking for help, just explaining. But Evelyn could hear the hunger in his voice, see the exhaustion in his shoulders. Without a word, she reached into her worn-out purse and pulled out a crumpled $5 bill, the last bit of cash she had until her check came in. "Here," she said, sliding it across the counter. He blinked, caught off guard. "I can't take that." She smiled softly. "You can't and you will. You said your bike's out of gas. Can't fix your life standing still, son." He shook his head, almost embarrassed. "Ma'am, I don't think you understand. That's your last bit, ain't it?" She chuckled. "You've got good eyes. My husband used to say the same. But he also used to say, kindness ain't worth much if it never costs you something." The biker stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right," he said, voice thick. "You win." He took the money, filled a small canister with gas, and before leaving, turned back. "What's your name?" "Evelyn," she said, smiling. "And you?" "Ghost," he replied. She raised an eyebrow. "That your real name?" He grinned faintly. "Real enough." He left with a wave, disappearing into the heat, the low rumble of his bike fading down the highway. Evelyn didn't expect to ever see him again. But the next morning, just as she was unlocking the station door, the ground began to shake. Faint at first, then louder. Dozens of engines. She looked up, squinting into the sunlight. Coming down the road was a line of motorcycles, 20 of them, roaring like thunder. Chrome flashing, jackets gleaming, everyone marked with the same patch. Hell's Angels. Evelyn's heart raced. The whole town stopped to watch. And when the first bike pulled into the lot, she saw the man from yesterday, Ghost, leading the pack. Engines rumbled like a storm rolling through the valley. Dust kicked up as the bikes came to a stop, forming a perfect line across the parking lot. People from nearby shops stepped outside, whispering to each other, watching with wide eyes. Hell's Angels didn't visit small towns like this, and they definitely didn't come in peace. But then Ghost stepped off his bike. Same leather vest. Same tired eyes. Only this time, he didn't look broken, he looked driven. He pulled off his gloves, walked straight toward Evelyn, and smiled. "Morning, ma'am." Evelyn blinked, her hands trembling slightly. "Ghost? What's all this?" He turned around, gesturing to the riders behind him. "These are my brothers," he said simply. "You gave me your last $5 yesterday. Said kindness only counts if it costs something." He smiled faintly. "That stuck with me." Evelyn chuckled nervously, looking around at the men who now filled her quiet gas station lot. "Well, I didn't expect a parade." One of the bikers laughed. "Ain't no parade, ma'am. It's payback." Before she could say another word, Ghost signaled to one of his crew. The man reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small metal box, handing it to Ghost, who placed it gently on the counter in front of her. "What's this?" she asked softly. "Open it." Her fingers shook as she unlatched the box. Inside was a thick envelope, cash, stacked neatly, hundreds of dollars at least, and a small silver necklace with a tiny angel wing pendant. She stared, stunned. "Ghost, I can't take this." He shook his head. "You're not taking anything, Evelyn. You earned it. You gave your last dollar to a stranger who didn't deserve it. That kind of heart deserves to be protected." Tears welled in her eyes as she touched the pendant, her voice barely a whisper. "I didn't do it expecting anything back. He smiled softly. That's exactly why you're getting it. One of the other riders stepped forward, a mountain of a man with kind eyes, and handed her a folded piece of paper. We talked to the mechanic down the road, he said. Your truck's getting fixed. New tires, new engine belt, oil change, the works. On us. Her jaw dropped. My truck? How did you even know? Ghost smirked. You told me it didn't run. And I don't forget when someone saves me. The noise of engines and whispers filled the air again as the men began unloading boxes from their bikes, bags of groceries, boxes of canned goods, even firewood. Evelyn's porch and counter were soon covered in more than she'd ever owned in years. Tears streamed down her face. I don't understand, she said, her voice trembling. Why would you do all this for me? Ghost's expression softened. Because people like you keep the world from turning into hell. You helped a man the world gave up on. And that means you helped every one of us. We don't forget that. He looked around at his brothers. You see this lady? This is what an angel looks like. The men nodded, some removing their hats, others giving small smiles. The whole town watched from across the street, silent, not from fear, but awe. Evelyn covered her mouth, her voice breaking. I don't even know what to say. Ghost leaned forward slightly. Say you'll keep being you. The world needs more Evelyns. Evelyn stood there, surrounded by the sound of idling engines and the smell of fuel and leather, her eyes wide as tears rolled down her wrinkled cheeks. The scene didn't feel real. The same small-town gas station where she'd spent years alone, forgotten by the world, now filled with men people crossed the street to avoid. Yet every one of them looked at her with quiet respect, like she was the most important person in the world. Ghost took off his vest, the one with the Hell's Angels patch, and draped it gently across the counter. You know what this stands for, Evelyn? He asked. She smiled faintly. People say it stands for trouble. He chuckled. Sometimes it does. But not today. Today it stands for loyalty. For family. You looked at a stranger and saw a person. That's rare, ma'am. That's real. One of the younger bikers stepped forward shyly, holding a small wrapped box. Ma'am, he said softly. We pitched in and got you something else. Evelyn blinked, confused, and unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a brand new cell phone. Simple, sturdy, already charged. We saved the number of our garage in there, the young man said. If you ever need anything, groceries, rides, or just someone to talk to, you call. Doesn't matter the time. Evelyn's lip trembled. I can't believe this, she whispered. I don't even know what to say. Ghost smiled gently. You already said it yesterday, when you handed me that $5. That was all the talking that needed to be done. The men began to pack up their things, but Ghost stayed behind, taking one last look around the dusty old store. You said your husband used to fix cars, right? She nodded. He was good with his hands. I just couldn't keep the place up after he passed. Ghost smiled, the kind of smile that hides 1,000 stories. Then let's fix that too. Evelyn frowned slightly. What do you mean? He whistled toward the door. 2 more bikers came in carrying a hand-painted sign. It read, Evelyn's Service and Station, Angels Welcome. Her hand flew to her mouth. You didn't. He nodded. We did. This place deserves a new start. So do you. The entire group erupted in applause as Ghost set the sign on the counter. For the first time in decades, Evelyn's laughter filled the room, shaky but bright, full of life. You boys, she said through tears, are not what people think you are. Ghost chuckled. Nah, we're worse. He winked. But not to you. As the roar of the engines started again, the ground shook beneath her feet. The townspeople stood outside watching, not in fear this time, but with something like admiration. Evelyn clutched the angel wing pendant around her neck, her heart full. I'll never forget this, she said. Ghost gave her one last nod, his voice low and steady. You don't have to. Just pass it on. The roar of the engines faded into the distance, leaving behind a stillness that didn't feel empty. It felt alive. Evelyn stood on the front step of her little gas station, the morning wind brushing against her face. The men were gone, but the echo of their kindness lingered like a heartbeat in the air. The townspeople, who had watched from across the street, began to drift closer, hesitant at first. One of them, a young mother holding her son's hand, spoke up softly. Mrs. Evelyn, were those really the Hell's Angels? Evelyn smiled, brushing a tear from her cheek. That's what their jackets said. The woman looked around at the groceries piled by the door, the new sign hanging over the station, the fresh coat of paint some of the riders had started before they left. And they did all this for you? Evelyn nodded. They did. Because yesterday, I gave one of them $5. The mother blinked in disbelief. Just $5? Evelyn's smile deepened, her voice steady now. Sometimes, $5 is just money. But sometimes, it's the only proof left that goodness still exists. She looked out toward the open road, where the horizon shimmered with heat, and for a moment, she thought she could still hear the faint hum of engines, distant, fading, but warm. Over the next few days, things began to change. People who had ignored her little gas station started stopping by, some to buy fuel, others just to say hello. Word had spread fast about the widow who helped a biker and how 20 angels rode in to return the kindness. The shop was cleaner now, brighter. The shelves were full. The phone on the counter, the one the bikers had given her, buzzed every few days with a short message. Sometimes it was just, "You good, Evelyn?" Other times, a simple, "Keep smiling." And she always replied with the same words, "Ride safe, boys." One evening, as the sun began to set, Evelyn locked up the station and stood by her husband's old truck, now fixed and gleaming under the light. She touched the angel wing pendant hanging from her neck and whispered, "You'd be proud of them, Henry. Of all of them." A tear slipped down her cheek, not from sadness, but from peace. Because for the first time in years, she didn't feel forgotten. She looked toward the road one last time, smiled, and said softly, "Sometimes, angels don't fall from heaven. They ride in on Harleys." If this story touched your heart, share it. Because kindness doesn't always come from the ones you expect. Sometimes, it comes roaring down the road in leather and steel, reminding the world that one small act of goodness can still change everything.